Welcome to Doing the Dang Thing podcast. I am your host, Jill Schmeeding. This podcast is all about helping everyday women play big and aspire for more. Before I jump into the show's content, I want to give a quick warning for any of my listeners out there. I always like to empower you, my listeners, with the knowledge that you need to make a healthy decision about how and when you should consume this podcast. On today's episode, I have a dear friend who is playing big. She was brave enough to come on the show, which is her first podcast, and to be vulnerable and bring awareness around pregnancy loss and miscarriage support. She knows firsthand what it's like to lose a child, as she has had multiple miscarriages. I think this is not an easy subject to talk about, and this is why I thought it was so important to have her on the show. Kristina Casinelli is an everyday woman. She is a phenomenal real estate agent here in the Denver, Colorado area, and she has been married 5 years, and she has a beautiful 4-year-old daughter. Her and her husband have been currently experiencing 2+ years of infertility and reoccurring miscarriages. And when I heard her story the last time we met at the park, I wanted to bring her on the show because I honestly feel like this is such a taboo topic to talk about, even amongst friends. And so I thought, what better way to bring awareness to the topic and to hear someone's personal story? I understand that every woman is different, and so this is just one woman's experience and story, but I think it is one woman who was brave enough to talk about it and bring awareness, and so I applaud Kristina for doing that. Without further ado, please welcome Kristina to the show. Welcome to the show, Kristina.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on the podcast and talk to me about something that is not that easy to talk about.
Thank you for having me. It's my first podcast, and I think it's an important topic that, a lot of people don't know how to talk about it. So I'm hopeful it'll bring some awareness, maybe help fill in some gaps, and hopefully will bring perspective that will help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the topic that we're talking about is something that you and I'll just give a little bit of a backstory. You and I met about 9 years ago, give or take?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at a wonderful self-defense course that we both found ourselves in. And that was put on by Impact Personal Safety of Colorado, which is so near and dear to both of our hearts, I believe. And we were in the self-defense class, and we have been friends ever since. And over the course of these 9 years, we have found a nice rhythm, if you would say, of meeting at the park, Washington Park, to be specific. And we go for a little stroll, and we have nice talks. And the last time that we were at the park chatting, we started to talk about you have one daughter, and you are still interested in having more children and the struggle behind that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. Our daughter is turning 4 in March. And, you always envision certain things about the way your life is going to play out. And I think I always had this vision of, I want, 2 to 3 kids. They'll be 2 to 3 years apart in age because that's my life. I'm one of 3. And you just assume, or you think, or you have an expectation of what that's going to look like. And for us, that's not the case. Our daughter's almost 4 and we have no children on the way. We're hoping to soon, but I think it's a reality for a lot of people. And at this point, I'm just so grateful we have her. Because I know a lot of couples are struggling to even have their first child. So very grateful, have a lot of gratitude for having our daughter, Cece. But yeah, hoping to expand our family. And we've been, working towards it for the last couple of years. And hopefully we'll get there soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because when you started to share your story about the struggles and the miscarriages, I'm a dear friend, and yet I still didn't quite know how to react. I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Ooh, is this something that you even want to talk about?" I feel like the whole subject around miscarriages and women when they are struggling to have children, is very taboo. It's very like, I don't know, I don't know if we should be talking about this, and so that's why I wanted to have you on my show and um yeah, just kind of bring some awareness to it and talk about it. And I know everyone is different. So, what works for you and how your family and friends came around to support you may be different for every, a different woman. And I recognize that. But I did want to at least share your story.
Yes, yes. And something I really appreciate about our friendship, Jill, is that we can talk about a wide range of topics, the typical wins that people like to celebrate, whether it be a baby shower or a wedding or a bridal shower, or a birthday even, but we can also talk about real life things and struggles and not just the things that are going well, but the things that might also not be going well. And I think with, pregnancy, infertility, pregnancy loss, miscarriage, those topics can bring up a lot of emotions for people. I have the advantage, or I guess the disadvantage, of having multiple pregnancy losses, and each time has been a totally different experience. So the first time I lost a pregnancy was actually the first time I was pregnant, which was before Cece. And that one was really difficult for me to talk about. I don't think I brought it up with a lot of people. I didn't know what to say. I was really grieving it for a long, long time. Kept it very private, and it's not something that people ask about anyway. So it was easy just to keep, kind of a secret, which also made it harder for me to process. Because now comparing that to, I've had two since then, and in the last 2 years, two more miscarriages, and I've talked about them more, specifically this most recent one. I just felt like I had unbelievable support from my friends this last time around, because more people knew about that pregnancy. I thought, this one was going to work out. So I had told more people. It was kind of over the holidays when I was pregnant. So by nature, more people knew about it. So then as a result, I told more people about the loss when it happened. So I have the contrast of having that first experience, and compared especially to this last one, and just the level of support I received really, made a huge difference in my healing and my processing of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, I have never had my own children, right? Never been married. And so it's one of those things where I have had several friends have miscarriages, and also just I have had gentlemen that have had wives that I've known have miscarriages. And it's one of those things where you're just kind of like, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what women go through, and I know it's very different for every single person, right? What would you say, if you're willing to share, how people were supportive when you were more open with it, like this last time?
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, it's a hard topic to bring up, going back to what you mentioned about uncomfortable things. I would preface this, this news with, hey, what I'm about to tell you is uncomfortable. And I have a feeling myself of, I don't like to make other people feel uncomfortable. So I always, felt a little bit bad or weird about sharing the news. However, some of the support I received this time around, one example is I was sitting at the doctor's office when my doctor had said, hey, there's no heartbeat. And so I'm in the parking lot, or in the parking garage, getting ready to leave the doctor's office. And I texted my best friend, what had happened. She knew I was having my ultrasound that day. So I texted her the news. And then between me leaving the doctor and me getting home afterwards, which there was probably 45 minutes in between, by the time I got home, there was already an order of groceries from my friend. She had ordered this beautiful, grocery order from Whole Foods with really easy to make snacks and meals and pasta and frozen meatballs and just things that she knew would make my life easier the rest of that day because, life still goes on. We do have a daughter, we still have to eat. And having those kinds of things on hand it just blew me away. I wasn't expecting anything, but to come home and see that before, it was at my doorstep before I even got home was so sweet.
Yeah, that you had mentioned that to me. Full disclosure, I knew that answer already because you mentioned that to me at the park, and I thought that personally, I felt like was really good idea, right? If you have the means to do something like that, it's like you do have to cook, you do have to eat, but who wants to do that, right? When you're grieving the loss of of a child. So I thought it was really good, and I was just like, oh my God, women need to hear this. Like this is this is an awesome way of being a friend, right? Now, I think I also mentioned this to another girlfriend of mine, and I was just like, oh my God, it's like somebody sent groceries like right before she even got out of the parking lot, and they were like, yeah, but I guess my question would be like, is that it depends on what someone's love language is. I brought this question up to you as well. And I was just like, oh, well, that's true. So, I mean, we don't have to dig deep into this, but it's just like for you, the groceries really spoke to you. And do you know what your love languages are by chance?
Oh gosh. I think I do. I think my love languages or my love language is the affirmations one, the words of
Okay.
affirmation. So it's not even, the gift one necessarily. And I have a few other examples too. And I agree with you. It doesn't have to be a monetary thing. I had, the support I got that weekend and that week ranged from, physical gifts like groceries. My other friends dropped off, pizzas and salads so we had food for the weekend, flowers, candy, that kind of thing. But also just a text, just a text saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry, or I'm thinking of you, or checking in a day or two later. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because I think too, with not only miscarriage, but I think just with grieving in general or bad news in general, there's this tendency to think, okay, I received bad news today. And then after a few days, I'm good. I'm over it. I've processed it and I'm over it. And that's just not the case, especially with this topic. I mean, there's a physical aspect to losing a pregnancy where you're not only emotionally devastated and in pain, but you're in physical pain too. There's that part of it as well. So just checking in, the days after and saying, hi, how are you? Or do you want to talk or do you not want to talk? And just not being afraid. I think a lot of times people are afraid of saying the wrong thing. So they say nothing. And that can feel very isolating. And I know I'm guilty of that as well. I've been in situations where I don't know what to say. So I don't say anything at all. So yeah, it can range from, it doesn't have to necessarily have a price tag associated with it, but I do have a notes folder in my phone now of, that I titled ways to show up for my friends, because I just learned so much from this experience. And I'm like, wow, am I showing up for my friends in the way they are for me? I just want to remember this feeling and how much it meant to me. And I want to be able to pass that on and pass it back to them, when in their time of need too.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's great, by the way, that you kept a list of the ideas. You know what I mean? Because when something is happening, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do. And you are prepared. So I applaud you for that. That's awesome. The one thing I wanted to just bring up too, or circle back to, is this idea of it being a taboo topic or like a taboo subject. Do you find that within your mom groups that it is still an uncomfortable thing to talk about? I mean, or with single ladies, is it, is there something is there a time when it's easier to talk about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in, recent times or with our generation, it's definitely become less taboo. I think, years ago, it was something that nobody mentioned, so no one knew it was happening. And I think it is more common than people think. Because since I've had my experiences, I have met other moms or other women that have had similar experiences to mine. And it's been really, the positive is that it's allowed me to connect with other women and other people, other couples in ways that I wouldn't be able to connect with. And there is a whole, it's like the club you don't want to be a part of, but everyone in this club is so empathetic and supportive because they know what it feels like. And you really don't know until you know. So to answer your question, I think it is still taboo in a way because it's such a bummer topic too. It's something that, you're not throwing out when you're having a good time and having drinks and having fun and the conversation is light. It is sort of a dark topic, but I think if it does come up and that person is comfortable sharing, I think it can create some really beautiful conversations around it and really provide support and help for someone going through it. And again, it's different for everyone. With my first one, I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. So I totally understand that. And maybe some people would never want to talk about it, which is okay too. But I've found that talking about it with other women especially has really helped me personally. And I think it is important to kind of break down that taboo of it, because I know so many women must be suffering in silence over it. And, I always say I'm an open book. If people want to bring it up to me, I'm all ears, and I'm always happy to share my experience and give support where I can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love walking with you at the park. I always am sharing these wild stories with you. It's like a soap opera. But I love dearly when you open up and talk about anything. And I think, this my whole podcast, Doing the Dang Thing, is all about playing big. And I think this goes hand in hand with that, right? Like being vulnerable, talking about it, especially coming on the show and talking about it. And being an open book, I think, is just so awesome. So I think that's where I'm like, you are playing big and you are doing the dang thing by talking about it. I have another follow-up question though that just came to my mind, which is this, like, with the first miscarriage that you had and not talking about it, do you think that there was some like shame around that? And do you think women still feel that ways, like when it keeps happening over and over again? Or like, I'm just curious. I have no idea. And I know you're one woman of many, so I'm not asking you to speak for everybody, just for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think I did experience some shame, and I experienced a huge distrust in my body because I felt like, okay, I'm a woman. I'm supposed to make a baby, right? Like this is in my body, like I'm supposed to be able to do it. And there's this perception that it's just so easy because of life and social media, and you see people families with these big families, or lots of kids, and you just think, oh, well, we tried to have a baby, we got pregnant, now here's our baby. And it's this very linear process. And so when it doesn't work out for you, or there's some struggle there, it's really easy to feel like you're kind of the odd man out, or you're, very isolated over here because your body is not doing that like it's supposed to, or you need some medical assistance if it's IVF or IUI or supplements or something, because for some couples it is very easy, and that's great, and that's what you want it to be smooth and easy and not stressful. So when it isn't the case, which I'm learning more and more is actually very common, to have some struggle with it. It's not an easy process. A lot of things have to go right in order to make a healthy baby. So yeah, I think there is some shame involved, and of course anything that has to do with your physical body, I think, can get very complex very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for sharing that. I do think that there's so many times in our lives as women that we do feel shame and shouldn't, right? And then you talk about it and you're just like, oh my God, I'm not alone. And like you said, it's more common. And it's one of those things where I feel like for me, my whole life, I've tried not to get pregnant. And it's, you hear all these commercials or whatever that is like, it takes only so many days out of the month you can get. I'm just like, okay, I'm doing everything I possibly can. And then you hear that, right? Where it's just like, no, it takes a lot. And it's like one magic moment, in time. And everything has to line up. And yeah, so it's crazy. And you're right. I do have other girlfriends that I know that literally, when they wanted to start their family, it was like, we're going to have a child. Boom, she got pregnant. And then she's like, we're going to wait a little while. And then it was like, we want another child. Boom, she got pregnant. I swear she did not have any issues ever. Now, if she knew if she knew I was talking about her, she'd probably be like, oh my God, Jill, you're an idiot. We had tons of issues, but she's got, 4 beautiful children now. And it was just whenever they wanted to have babies, boom, boom, boom. It just happened for them. And yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, it's not fair, it's not fair that I'm always one to say, oh, it's not fair. But life isn't fair, unfortunately. So, that's
Yeah,
life.
and you see, and that goes along with like the social media kind of highlight reel. You just always see pregnancy announcements, which are beautiful, and or baby photos, whatever. And no one's writing in there, oh, by the way, I lost 3 babies in between these two, and
Yes.
not a positive thing. That's not a happy moment to share. But I think if, you keeping that in mind that, everyone is struggling with something. It doesn't have to be this specifically. So just in general, you just have to assume, we're all going through something at all times. We're all grieving something. And it's different for everyone. So it's easy to think that it looks easy or seems easy for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just say with that topic of, Instagram life is the happy life type thing. That's so annoying. I mean, I'm guilty of it, right? But it's just like, I do love when I come across an Instagrammer that's like so real,
Mm-hmm.
so real. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so freaking refreshing, like not everything is perfect. And yeah, so it's just really, really encouraging. I love it when I see it. And I love the authenticity part of life. So yeah. Well, one other question I had for you, or another question I had, was the support. I know we talk about you and how you've made it through it, and maybe we even need to dive into do a little bit deeper about how you made it through it with each one, right? Like if there was any sort of thing that you did, but and I want to talk about that, but I also just want to touch on afterwards is like the support. If you have seen, what is the support for the fathers, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Because I obviously am not talking to too many men. Um, I have had a few, and yeah, it's just different for everybody. So
Yeah, definitely. I'll mention one more thing about my sort of circle of friends first, and then we can dive into the male support because I think that's a really important topic too. But just in general, I was kind of going through something else a couple years ago, and one of my friends said to me, and I had never heard the combination of these words in a sentence before. Or maybe everyone else already knows this, but it's not something I had ever heard before. But my friend asked me, she said, how can I support you? Or how can I support you through this? What do you need today? What do you need right now? And I was so used to, the phrase, let me know what you need, or let me know if you need anything, which
I
I'm
am
guilty.
guilty of that.
Yes. And when she said, how can I support you? I was like, whoa, like again, copy paste, put it in my notes section of my phone. Like, I want to remember this because I had never heard that question phrased that way before. And now I try to use it because it's so specific to, if you say, let me know what you need, no one's going to say what they need, or they don't know what they need, or they're not going to say, hey, will you go pick up my child from school because they like physically can't get out of bed. Like no one's going to actually give you something tangible that they need help with. But when you phrase it like that, like what can I do to support you, it just brings that question back around again. And I just really loved that and wanted to share because that's something that really, it just blew me away, that sentence and that phrase.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting is it's so simple, right? Less is more. And we forget that is, like that's just a really good thing to say. I am so guilty. And kind of, I feel like, if I'm going to be honest, which I hate being this honest, sometimes it's like a cop out, right? Where it's just like, hey, let me know if you need anything. I did have a gentleman who was going through a tough time a few months ago, and I don't really know, right, how to help him. And so I was just like, let me know if you need anything. That is my go-to line. And kind of like I said, kind of like a, hey, I'm here for you, but I'm not going to brainstorm any ideas that I, could do for you. I'm definitely not going to just act out and do something like your girls did with the groceries. That takes extra effort. And so that this is me being super like showing my ugly side, where it's just like, hey, I want to text you and I want to act like I care, but like that's pretty much all I'm going to do. And so doesn't make me feel good saying it right now, but how can I support you? Because I wrote it down. How can I support you?
We should all write it down so we can
All right down. How can I support you? I'm sure there's people out there, listeners, that are like, duh, but I'm just
I
like,
know,
yeah,
duh.
no, it's not duh. It's really not duh. It's in my personal opinion, I go on Instagram and I get reminded of the simplest things and I'm like, oh my God, I needed that today, right? Like I heard it last week. I need to get today. So I think it's always important. Um, so yes, tip of the podcast episode is how can I support you? That's really, really good. And it kind of goes along. That's another thing where when you ask someone, how are you doing? Right? How are you doing? And then they're just like, oh, I'm fine. And you're just like, yeah, how are you really doing? And someone just asked me, what's one question? This is off the subject. This is a little tangent here, but they said, what's one question you like to ask or whatever? And I'm just like, how are you really doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because that gets past the whole like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, sunny day, talk about the weather. So I think that how can I support you is just the extra way of being like, how are you really doing?
Right. Yeah, I think so too. It just gives the other person permission to, for one, think about it. Like maybe they don't know, and that's perfectly fine too. But just to think, oh, I don't know. I don't know yet, but maybe, can you check in tomorrow? Or can I just text you some thoughts? Or can we just, tell me a joke? Or like, let's talk about something completely different. It just kind of helps that person think about, okay, what do I need in this moment? And they still may or may not be willing to share, but I think it's a beautiful way just to open up that conversation. And I think by saying, let me know what you need, or, what we used to say, I think that, I mean, it's better than saying nothing, right? It's, you're saying,
Yeah.
I care for you, let me know, but it goes back to this, like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. So I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm not going to say kind of anything. And then, now we're done with the conversation. Let's move. We're just in a hurry to get back to talking about, happy things only. But I think, with everything, life is a journey, and we're constantly learning how to love on our people and support each other, because we're all in this together. And I just think it's okay to give ourselves grace as we figure it out and see how to show up for, our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that. I second that message right there. Well, I will say this, and I will repeat this whole idea of coming onto the podcast, talking about it, being vulnerable. I applaud you for that, because it is one of those things where it's like, you know, not the easiest subject to talk about. And so I applaud you for playing big in
Mm-hmm.
this moment. And I appreciate you wanting to share your story. Is there anything else? I mean, anything really that you would love to share with the listeners about this, or about playing big, or anything?
Yeah, we had talked about the support for fathers. We can touch on that.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you. So sorry. Forgot about the fathers already. I am
Never
horrible.
forget. I know.
So sorry, Dad. Sorry. Oh, how did we get off on a tangent? This is why our, our walks at the park last like two loops,
We
because we
always need
just,
the second loop so we can keep
yes.
going and wrap up all the loose ends.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for remembering that. Wow. Okay. Yes. Dads. Here we go. Here we go. We're going to talk about dads.
The dads in general, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to generalize, but I don't know
Yeah.
if men in general have a lot of support with each other, right? Like this is something that my women friends and I talk about often, about our husbands or our partners. Do they have, what do they talk about? Is it football and, fantasy football, basketball tournaments, whatever? Or are they going deeper? Are they getting support from their friendships in ways that women are? I'm sure some of them are. I don't know that it's as common. I know that for me, I am so fulfilled in multiple ways by all of the relationships I have with people in my life, but my friendships with women are so special to me because I have so many outlets to talk about work or marriage or raising kids or, fertility thing, whatever it is. Like, I feel like I have just so many buckets of support in my life. And I don't know if that's super common for men. And I don't know, I think they get left out sometimes because it is often seen as, it's a woman's body. So it's the wife or the mother's sort of issue. But I think there is a lot of grief for the fathers too. Everyone experiences it differently. And I can't speak for, my husband's experience, but I think there is a tremendous amount of grief in that. And then for them watching their, partners going through the physical aspects of miscarriage, because it is very physically demanding and it has to do with your health and overall well-being, as well as your emotional one. So I don't know. I hope that they are getting support and feeling comfortable to reach out to each other. But my guess is that there's still a lot of work to be done in that category.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. And I do feel bad for men out there these days. I mean, the special ones have an amazing group of guy friends. I work with someone who has this amazing group of guy friends that he goes on trips with and goes out on the weekends with. And I'm just like, I need to have you on my podcast. You're special. There's something special about you that you have this amazing group of guy friends, that you could be vulnerable with. He went to high school with them and he's in his 40s, I want to assume. So it's pretty awesome to see when you see it, but boy, I tell you, you rarely see it. And I'm with you. I have amazing, amazing girlfriends, and they're my lifeline for a lot of my life stuff. And so to not have that would be very difficult. So yeah, I hope things change for men someday soon. I think the whole world would benefit from that,
Agree.
We'll just leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Oh man, that's great. That's great. Well, yeah, unless you have anything else, I mean, that for now, I mean, that covers it for me. I just, yeah, do you have any other final thoughts or anything?
No, I don't. I just really appreciate you having me on, and I always appreciate our conversations and our friendship. And I just really find it so important to talk about, the hard things in life as well as the good things. It just brings balance and perspective. And if my story will help someone else going through a hard time, then that's what I would hope it would. And yeah, because I know that other stories and talking to other women about it has really helped me. So I'm always looking to pass it on and, pay it forward.
I want to thank Kristina for coming on the show and playing big. And I know there are listeners out there who can relate to her story. And I think it's important that you know that you are not alone. I did also put some links in the show notes for different types of support groups if that's something that you want to look into. I wanted to be able to offer that to my listeners out there. That is all I have for today on Doing the Dang Thing podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in yet again to another week's episode of talking to an everyday woman who is playing big and aspiring for more. Take care, everyone.